Hello, this is Richard Wilson coming to you from the Swiss Alps here in Switzerland. I'm actually in town to speak at a family office conference and I'm traveling from Zurich to Liechtenstein. And I thought it was only appropriate to record a video here at about 10,000 feet elevation since I'm often trying to provide a 10,000 foot view of the family office industry. And today I wanted to talk to you about the history of family offices, how they got started, what's the background behind them, and how they are the way they are today. So first of all, if you think back, the word family office hasn't always existed, but they've really originated from, thousands of years ago. If you had, the king cavemen, or even before that, if you just look at animals and how they protect their land and protect their resources and are territorial. If you think back to cavemen, the biggest caveman leader of his tribe, might have had a bigger cave and more extra firewood and furs or whatever. And he probably had someone protecting that while he's gone. He probably didn't leave it there in the open while he went off hunting or something. From there, I really think you can go to kind of the Renaissance era, or kind of the Dark Ages type era, where people had lands and there was nobles and kingdoms. If you think about it, a noble, when he went and traveled to go off and marry some other noble's daughter, he probably didn't leave his land with no one there. Someone was trusted to protect it. And I recently learned from Thomas Handler, a trust and estates executive in the family office space, that actually the word trust and the whole concept of a trust being set up is back during those times when somebody would appoint someone in charge of looking over their lands and belongings while they were off traveling. Then they would appoint somebody else to make sure that this first person did their job. And if they weren't doing their job, they were supposed to kill them or get rid of them and replace them and have someone else who was trusted to watch over everything. And that's really how the word trust came about. And if you're not familiar with that already, private banks are sometimes called trusts. And it could be called trust services and private banking services. And really that's where the word trust came from when you're setting up a trust. And it's partially where the word trust came from. And so from there, it really evolved in the 1800s and 1900s with big families like Rockefeller and families that made a lot of money in the oil business and the railroad business and the Industrial Revolution. And they started having so much money in the current financial system, it was more about paper money than it was about goods or land. And it was really about protecting and reinvesting the paper money. And that's when the modern family office started to really develop. It still wasn't called a family office. Many times this was the beginning of private banks and trust services in the more modern form, instead of having just somebody trusted with your assets. This is a more modern form of private banking, but nobody really used the term family office. It was really private banking for very wealthy families. Late in the 1800s and early 1900s, these became more popular. In the mid-1900s, the first uses of the term single family office or family office started to be used. It picked up steam a bit in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And in the 1970s, as private banking was already relatively popular, that's when people started realizing that they could manage the wealth of one or two other families in addition to their own. And so the term family office grew in definition from managing one family's wealth to managing a few families' wealth that maybe are involved in the same operating business or have very strong long-term ties. From there, the term further evolved and has resulted in a lot of confusion in the industry. Some people believe that it's not a family office unless it serves only one family or two or three families at the very most, but really just one family. Otherwise, it's not a family office. But the reality is that modern day, a single family office is that which serves one family or maybe two at most, and a multifamily office is a family office that serves 2, 3, 4, 5 families, or sometimes hundreds of families. I just interviewed a family office that works with over 425 clients. Many very successful family offices only have 50 or 100 or 150 clients, and they're very successful in doing that because every client has 20 million, 50 million, $100 million to manage, so their assets are enormous, even if they only have 50 clients many times. Many family offices require $20, $30 million, $50 million, or much more to join their family office. I think that's important to know about the history of the industry and where it's at right now. In the past, you had to have more wealth. Now from 30 and 50 million, it's down to 15, 20 million, and 20 million is really where most family offices require you to have that amount of money. And really to summarize, it's always been about the protection and preservation of assets, and secondarily the growth of assets and the efficient taxation and income that can come from those assets. And that really has been true for the last couple thousand years, if you think about it. And it's changed the most over the past 100 years. And I think this industry is really thriving right now because people are actually getting familiar with what it means to be a family office. More people than ever are having enough wealth to use family office services and become ultra affluent. And I think that the family office trend is not slowing down at all. So I have a separate video on the future of family offices. I would encourage you to watch that. If you haven't been to FamilyOfficesGroup.com, I would encourage you to visit our website. And thank you for joining me today. This is Richard Wilson from the Family Offices Group, coming to you from the Swiss Alps.